symbolize dignity, identity, and spiritual devotion. In the Bible, especially in the story of Samson, hair carries a profound meaning. Samson's long, uncut hair was not just a personal preference or cultural expression. Why was Samson not allowed to cut his hair? It was his strength. Was it just he wasn't supposed to cut it? Who told him not to do it? God specifically commanded that his hair not be cut. It represented a life. The uncut hair was not just a personal preference or cultural expression. It was the visible sign of a deeper spiritual reality. It represented a life with God, a divine vow, and a unique calling. So as we explore Judges chapters 13 through 16 tonight, I want us to look at how something as simple as hair can symbolize consecration, strength, and redemption. Samson's story mirrors many of our struggles today. Now, why would I say that Samson's story is kind of like our story today? How would we compare Samson's story to today's world? You got to do what God tells you to do, or you will be punished.
We may have a lot of struggles too.
Yeah.
We make certain vows to God, in a way, if we, that we're not going to do some certain thing, or we're going to do certain thing.
Right.
He made a vow.
Exactly.
A lot of people relied on him too because of the strength.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably put pressure on him.
It did. It put a lot of pressure on him. Because people see Samson as this mighty hero. They see him as what the Greeks would see as Hercules would be. Or as one of the Greek gods would be, how they were so strong and nothing could defeat them. No sword could penetrate them. No bomb could kill them. And nothing could hurt them.
But you got a lot of people, even back then, they would say, okay, Samson, come help me. I need help. It's not what Samson wanted to do sometimes, but what they wanted Samson to do for them.
Exactly. The study for this fits perfectly with our Vacation Bible School's theme because it reminds us that hair is not just about outward strength, but also inner purpose, identity, and spiritual discipline. Hair is a personal thing to us. We groom it, we style it, we grow it to express who we are. In Scripture, God often uses the physical to point us to the spiritual truths. Samson's story offers a metaphor. The condition of our hair may reflect the condition of our hearts. Samson's story begins during a dark time in Israel. Judges chapter 13 verse 1 says, "And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years." The children of Israel, did they love serving God? Did they love obeying what God said every time?
For short periods of time.
For very short periods of time. But always, they got punished. So this one time they do evil, and so God gives them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. The people were trapped in rebellion and oppression. But did God abandon them? Never. He never abandoned them. Instead, He intervened through a barren woman, Manoah's wife, who received a divine message from the angel of the Lord. What was that message? she would have a son. Judges 13:5 declares, and the son would be a Nazirite from birth. And it declares in 13 verse 5, no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazirite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. The Nazirite vow, described in Numbers chapter 6, requires abstaining from wine, avoiding corpses, and not cutting one's hair as a visible sign of consecration. While typically temporary, Samson's vow was lifelong. It was supposed to be for the rest of his life, making this long hair a symbol of his sacred covenant. God's instruction came even before Samson was born, showing that his life had divine purpose before the start. His hair was about vanity. It was about a public statement of Samson saying, I belong to God. Let me ask you this. Do you believe your life is set apart with a divine purpose even before birth? Why? He wanted everyone to be good. Psalm 139, 13 through 16 reminds us that God forms us intentionally in the womb. Why did God command that Samson's hair never be cut? Because his hair was the visible sign of his lifelong Nazirite vow. It was a sign of decoration and God's special calling on his life. We have to ask ourselves, how do we show that we belong to God? Are we showing that we belong to God? Are we living in a way that marks us as set apart? Or have we allowed the world to cut away our distinctiveness? Now, although Samson was born with a divine calling, his life soon reveals the challenge of living faithfully. Is it easy to be a Christian? We don't. How many of you as a kid loved doing everything by the rules? You didn't. I didn't. But now that I'm older, I see, hey, if I don't abide by the rules, something really bad's going to happen. And even then when I was younger, I said, if I don't obey by the rules, something is going to happen. No matter how old or how young we are, if we don't obey by the rules, something is going to happen that's not going to be pleasant. Judges chapter 14 begins with Samson seeing a Philistine woman and demanding, get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. Verse 3. We see this phrase, right in my eyes. And it's a key phrase repeated throughout Judges to describe a society that does what seems right to itself, ignoring God's standards. Judges 21, verse 25. Now, despite his mission to fight the Philistines, Samson repeatedly pursues the Philistine woman, mixing with the enemy culturally and spiritually. What does he do in verse 6? He's really kind of being a show-off. He kills a lion with his bare hands. Then what does he do? He takes the honey and eats it from its carcass. Verses 8 through 9. What's the problem with that? Went to his head. He violated the Nazirite vow, which was that Nazirite vow was abstaining from wine, avoiding corpses, and not cutting one's hair. Well, he had violated that vow by eating from the carcass, which forbids contact with dead bodies. Later, he hosts a wedding feast in verse 10, which, guess what? Violates that Nazirite vow. In chapter 15, his actions become increasingly vengeful. When his wife is given to another, what does he do? What does it say he does in verses 4 through 5 of chapter 15? He does. He takes 300 foxes with torches tied to their tails and burns the Philistine fields. Well, what happens when the Philistines realize that this is what Samson does? Do they just say, okay, we'll step back and it's good, you can handle it, we're not going to bother you? No, they want to attack. He's provoking the Philistines to attack. So what does he do? Verse 15. He takes on 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone and slaughters them. His physical strength is undeniable. But remember, God doesn't look on what's on the outside. God looks what's on the inside. And what was on the inside reveals impulsiveness, pride, and disregard for God's instructions. But despite all of that, God still uses Samson, despite his flaws. But his story warns us that personal holiness matters. Calling without character leads to collapse. What is the pattern that we see in Samson's early life?
God's with him a lot.
God is with him a lot. Through the good, through the bad, and through the ugly.
Well, even the 1,000 men that he killed, God was with him then.
Exactly. We see a repeated willingness, but we also see a repeated willingness to compromise his spiritual identity for personal desires, ignoring the boundaries of his vow. I'm not asking you to publicly say this, but think about it. Have you ever known your purpose, but acted in ways that contradicted it? If you look at Samson's story, it warns that external signs of faith, like uncut hair, are not enough if the inward compromise persists. Again, we have to ask ourselves, are we living in compromise while keeping the appearance of faith? Are we relying on God's strength but ignoring God's standards? The longer this continues, the more vulnerable we will become. So now we get to Judges chapter 16. Samson is starting to near the end of his downward spiral. He's physically strong. His spiritual discernment is weak. He is increasingly drawn to this Philistine woman, revealing his blindness to the dangers of entanglement with the very people God called him to defeat. Samson was already becoming blind before he had even physically became blind. He was taking his eyes off of God. Judges 16 verse 1 says, Samson went to Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute, and he went to her. Well, what's the automatic problem with verse 1 in general? Should he be running towards her?
I'd be running away from him.
I'd be running from someone like that. That is no good. There's no good thing about that situation. The Gazites were told, Samson has come here. And they surrounded the place and set an ambush for him all night at the gates of the city. They kept quiet all night, saying, let us wait till the light of the morning. Then we will kill him. But Samson was cunning. Samson knew how to get away from an attack. But it says, but Samson lay till midnight. Now, why would he wait till the dead of night to make his move?
They fallen asleep, I guess.
They could have fallen asleep. John, what happens at night? If we were to go outside, could we read that Vacation Bible School sign right outside this door? We could see it right now because there's daylight. But what happens about 8 or 9 o'clock at night? Could we look and see that sign? No, it's dark. You can't see. It's what? You can't see the sign of danger. So when he arose, he took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the two posts, and pulled them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders, carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. It says, after this, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The valley of Sorek sat between Israel and Philistine territories, a symbolic place for compromise. Delilah's name is typically known to have meant to weaken or to dry up. She is a personification of what Samson has allowed to happen spiritually. So we see that now they see something that tends to happen to a lot of people. Young boys, when they see someone they really want to be with, what happens to their mind? It goes away. Their mind solely focuses on, that's the person I want to be with. That's the person, I don't care what characteristic they have, that's who I want to be with. Does it always work? It doesn't always work. Well, the Philistines see, well, we've got this woman. Why don't we use her? Why don't we use her to trick Samson? There's got to be a way to make him weak. Everybody has that weakness. Let's figure out what his weakness is. So they tell Delilah, seduce him and see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him. And we will each give you 1,000 pieces of silver. 3 times she pleads with Samson. And what happens all 3 of those times? He tricks her. Verse 6. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies and how you might be bound so that one could subdue you. I'm your wife, so don't hide anything from me. Tell me what your weakness is. What is your weakness? Everybody has a weakness. Tell me what it is. Samson says to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought her up 7 fresh bowstrings. Verse 9. Now she had men lying in an ambush in the inner chamber. And she said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. Does it stop him? He breaks the straps. And a thread of flax snaps when it touches the fire. So the secret of his strength was still not known. So Delilah she asked again. Says, if they bind me with new ropes so that they have not been used, then I shall become weak like any other man. So she does it again. Verse 13. Then Delilah said to Samson, until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you might be bound. She says, I've got him this time. He cannot lie to me. And he said to her, if you weave 7 locks of my head with the web and fasten it tight with the pin, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his head and wove them into the web and she made them tight with the pin, and said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he awoke from his sleep and pulled away the pin, the loom, and the web. Here, we have to pause and ask, if she's tried to trick him 3 different times, what is making Samson choose to stay with her? Surely he knows that she's trying to trick him. Why wouldn't he just leave and say, "This is a problem"? Is it pride? Is it foolishness? Is it a delusion that he thinks he's untouchable? We see in verse 16 that it says, when she pressed him hard enough with the words, we see it says, and when she pressed him hard with the words day after day. We see in verse 15, she said to him, "How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great sin lies." Finally, he gets tired. He gets tired of lying to her. And he says, okay. He told her with all his heart, said, "A razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak like any other man." By sharing this truth with Delilah, he has now let go of the last symbol of his divine calling. Delilah now knows that he has told the truth. She lures him to sleep on her lap and shaves off the 7 locks, signals the Philistine. What does verse 20 say?
She said, "The Philistines be upon thee, son Samson." And he awoke out of his sleep and said, "I will go out as at other times before he shake myself." And he wished that the Lord was departed from him.
But he did not know that the Lord left him. Samson rises, expecting strength, but it's gone. It's not there. We see that he is seized. His eyes are blinded and bound in bronze shackles. The man who once tore apart lions now becomes a slave. Let me ask you this. Was it the haircut that took away Samson's strength? What took away Samson's strength?
I'd say the blindness.
The haircut symbolized the final breach of his vow. It wasn't in the hair itself, but in the Spirit of God, who it says at the end of verse 20, had left him. Samson had abandoned his calling. How many times have we flirted with compromise before? Assuming we'll be able to rise and fight as before, but we lose. Samson's downfall reminds us that persistent disobedience gradually leads to a point of no return unless we repent. Maybe some of you have dealt with Delilahs in your life, whether it be relationships, behaviors, or influences that are luring you into a spiritual sleep. Is there something you are refusing to let go of that could lead to your spiritual defeat? But just when all seems lost, we see that Samson is now tied in between the two pillars. They call him out of the prison, verse 25. And he entertained them. They made him stand between the pillars and the sacrifice to Dagon their god. And Samson said to the young man who held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them." Now the house was full of women, men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there. And on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women who looked on while Samson entertained. But it says in verse 22, just when all seemed lost, that one measly verse in verse 22 starts to turn the tide. But the hair of his head began to grow after it had been shaved. What does that hair growing resemble?
I think verse 28 says his will for better.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, my Lord."
This small detail whispers of God's grace. Though blind and broken, Samson's story is not over. God is still with him. All it said was his strength was gone. It never said God was fully gone. It proves that no matter what happens to us, we're never going to be without God. The Philistines make a mockery of Samson. They hold this big festival to celebrate his defeat, attributing to the victory of their false god. Like I said, they bring Samson into the temple to entertain the crowd. He is blind. He is humiliated. He is weakened. He can't do anything but sit there. And for the first time, something was different. What was different about Samson? His strength wasn't there, but he woke up. How did he wake up, Don?
He woke up and realized what he'd done was wrong, and he forgot about God.
He realizes, I'm in big trouble. What you got, Brian?
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think there was a little vengeance behind that.
There was.
Well, I mean, you think about the humility. It's a story of humility. He was humbled by this happening to him. You've also got the humility of the Philistines. They didn't show humility, or they'd have just killed him. They were arrogant in keeping him alive because they wanted to torture him, to make him kind of pay for what he'd done to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to backfire on him eventually because of revenge too. So
They knew he was weak. It's the same thing with the story of Absalom. They could have humiliated Absalom even more. But does Joab humiliate him and just say, you got your hair stuck in a tree. Why don't you just stay there? Just stay there and live out the rest of your life stuck in a tree. He gets killed. But these people wanted to make him feel the lowest of lows and continuing feeling low. Little did they know that Samson was actually praying. Verse 28, then Samson called to the Lord and said, O Lord God, please remember me and please strengthen me only this once, O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. You think about what he's doing. Yeah, he's saying, please give me my strength back, but give me the strength back so we can all fall together. So I can end the Philistines once and for all, to end myself too. But he says, so I may be avenged on the Philistines for what? My 2 eyes. It says, it's recorded that this is the first prayer of Samson. It is short, but sincere. No arrogance, no demands, just dependence. He asked God for strength, not for his own glory, but to fulfill the mission that he was called to do. And that was to destroy the Philistines. So he places his hands on the pillars supporting the temple and pushes with all his might. It says, he leaned his weight against them, his right hand on one and his left on the other. And he says, let me die with the Philistines. You think the Philistines knew what was about to happen? Probably not. They just hear, why is he crying? Let me die with the Philistines. We're not fixing to get killed. We won. We destroyed him. We took away his strength. But it says he bowed with all his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those who he had killed during his life. Then his brothers and all his family came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. He had judged Israel 20 years. Samson's life ends in both tragedy and triumph. He dies with the Philistines, but he also fulfills his divine purpose to begin delivering Israel from their enemies. His strength returned, not because of hair regrowth, but because of a restored relationship with God. So the question is, what does Samson's final act teach us about God's grace? It means God's grace can meet us at any time we want it to. At all times. Even in our lowest moments. Even after failure. When we turn to Him in humility, He can restore and use us for His purposes. Your story, my story, it's not over. No matter how much we've lost. Like Samson, your hair can grow again. Your calling, your joy, your relationship with God. Now it may take time, but restoration is possible. Maybe you're here tonight and you have an area of your spiritual life that needs restoration. We need to pray like Samson and ask God for strength, not to glorify ourselves, but to fulfill our purpose. Samson's story is like a mirror. It shows us our potential. It shows us our flaws. And it shows us our hope. His uncut hair represented consecration, and its loss represented compromise. But its regrowth represents grace. What is the condition of our hair today? Do we still bear the signs of our calling? Or have we allowed compromise to shave away our spiritual strength? Are we trying to live by our own power, or are we humbly depending on God? Tonight we are reminded that strength does not come from symbols, but from surrender. The God who gave Samson strength gives us His Spirit when we repent and rely on Him. Our strength can return. Our mission can be renewed. God is constantly in the business of restoring broken people and broken hearts. I hope we all can leave tonight not in despair over our weakness, but with the hope of God's mercy. Let Samson's story inspire us to renew our vows, to return to our calling, and to trust in the God who strengthens us even when we fall. Because God says, my strength is sufficient for you. My grace is sufficient for you. Don't ever forget who the Father is. Don't ever forget who the high power is. Thank you all for this time tonight. We have one more night. We'll learn tomorrow about Mary washing Jesus' feet, but I hope we all can take what we've learned about these few days and apply it to our lives and share it with others. Because we see a world that is broken. We see a world that has a lot of problems. We see a world that needs to get back with God.